This is the world news on your premium talk radio. Today, 95.1 FM Port. I am Amaka Felix. Good evening. Let's begin with the headlines. Senate approves President Tinubu's $21 billion foreign loan. PSC vows to flush out drug addicts in Nigeria police force. Amechi's wife denies receiving 4 billion naira monthly from NDDC. And on the foreign scene, Brazil Supreme Court threatens to arrest former President Bolsonaro. Details in a moment. The Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's external borrowing plan of over $21 billion for the 2025 to 2026 fiscal cycle, paving the way for the full implementation of the 2025 Appropriation Act. The approval followed the presentation of a report by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debt, Senator Aliyu Wamako, who noted that the plan was first submitted to the National Assembly on May 27, but was delayed due to legislative recess and documentation issues from the Debt Management Office. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senator Olamilekan Adeola, said most of the loan requests had already been factored into the medium-term expenditure framework and the 2025 budget. While the approval drew broad support, it also raised concerns. Senator Sani Musa clarified that the loan disbursement would span 6 years, not just 2025. Meanwhile, the Senate has announced plans to hold a special session tomorrow in honor of former President Muhammadu Buhari. The tribute session will reflect on his legacies and contributions to national development following his recent passing. Last week, the Federal Executive Council, FEC, held a special session in honor of the former president. At the event on Thursday, President Bola Tinubu said that Buhari led the country with restraint, governed with dignity, and bore the burdens of leadership without complaint. Buhari died in London on July 13 after a prolonged and undisclosed illness. He was buried last week in Daura, Katsina State, in a ceremony attended by dignitaries from within and outside Nigeria. Suspended Kogi Central Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has described President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, as the worst ever in the history of Nigeria. Natasha disclosed that Akpabio runs the Senate like his third term as governor of Akwa Ibom State. The embattled lawmaker disclosed this while addressing newsmen in front of the National Assembly gate. Natasha, who was poised to resume sitting, was prevented from gaining entrance into the National Assembly complex. Condemning the act, the lawmaker said that Akpabio has done her many wrongs. The Police Service Commission, PSC, has vowed to flush out drug addicts in the Nigeria Police Force and has extended an invitation to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to assist the Commission achieve this noble objective. Head Press and Public Relations of the PSC, Ikechukwu Ani, in a statement, said the PSC chairman made the vow during a visit to the corporate headquarters of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, where it formally met with the agency's chairman and chief executive and his management team. Ani said the chairman of the commission, DIG Hashimu Argungu, used the occasion to invite the agency to join the commission in all the processes of screening prospective Nigerians who are desirous of joining the Nigeria Police Force. DIG Argungu, who was received by the chairman of the NDLEA, Brigadier General Buba Marwa, said there was need for a functional partnership between the commission and the agency in the fight to eradicate drug abuse in the Nigerian police. Argungu said it was dangerous to give firearms to drug addicts and vowed that the commission is poised to flush out such officers in the police force. In response, Marwa pledged the agency's commitment to assist the commission sanitize police recruitment. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar says any form of threat against the 2023 Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi is a threat against all Nigerians. His comments come amid backlash following remarks by Edo State Governor Monday Okpebolo, who last Friday warned Obi against visiting the state without obtaining security clearance. Atiku declared this in a brief statement posted on his X handle. The controversy stemmed from Obi's visit to Benin City on 7 July, where he was warmly received during a visit to the School of Nursing Sciences at St. Philomena's Hospital. During the visit, he donated 15 million naira to support the completion of ongoing projects at the institution. However, Governor Okpebolo raised concerns that Obi's visit coincided with an uptick in insecurity in the state, particularly attacks targeting religious leaders. The media office of Judith Amechi, wife of the former governor of Rivers State, has condemned recent allegations by Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, describing his claims as baseless and politically motivated. Responding to Wike's televised accusation that Amechi and the Empowerment Support Initiative, ESI, received 4 billion naira monthly from the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, Amechi emphasized that neither she nor ESI has ever received such funds. The media team led by DK Bekwele clarified that ESI, a registered NGO since 2011, maintains a transparent and mutually beneficial partnership with NDDC to support youth and women empowerment initiatives in the Niger Delta. The statement added that the partnership has been successfully implemented since inception, with both the ESI and the NDDC expressing satisfaction as numerous youths and women across the Niger Delta have benefited from the scheme aimed at promoting self-reliance and sustainability. The statement clarified that these programs are documented and publicly verifiable. Describing Wike's remarks as false and defamatory, Amechi challenged him to produce evidence from the yet unpublished NDDC forensic audit report or resign and issue a public apology if no such evidence exists. The sole administrator of Emoha local government area in River State, Franklin Ajunwo, has condemned the killing of the vice chairman of the Obele Council of Chiefs, Ferdinand Dabiri. Ajunwo, who led some council leaders and heads of various security agencies to the crime scene and to engage with leaders and residents of Obele, expressed displeasure over the incident. He also alleged that members of the community are aware of the identities of the killers, a situation that has led to some residents fleeing the area. The sole administrator accused the Obele community of compromising peace and security by shielding the perpetrators, warning that protecting criminals undermines community safety and development.
I must say it is very, very unfortunate because the chief that was gunned down is a vocal voice of this community. I know many times he had confronted us at the local government headquarters, asking for one thing or another for his community. I must also say that the Obele people cannot deny the fact that they do not know whom these criminals are. I know that the security agencies in this local government are doing wonderfully well. They work round the clock, trying to see how they can bring permanent peace to make everybody sleep with two eyes closed. But they can do as much as they can based on the available information. If you as natives and locals will see this person who has been terrorizing you, he comes to the community, he moves around, and you will not inform the police.
Ajunwo urged security agencies to ensure the swift arrest and prosecution of those responsible for Chief Dabiri's murder. He also condoled the community and called for the restoration of peace, assuring that the council would provide the necessary support.
Security agencies must not leave anything undone. He must walk around the clock to bring this criminal who has shot this chief to book. Anyway, is do everything necessary to make sure you arrest him and let him come and answer for whatever thing he has done. You have this marching order, and you know you have the capacity to do that. You have always done it, and this particular case, I want to see you accept it like a challenge. As many as they are, both him, conspirators, and all those who aided and abetted it, make sure you bring them to book. Arrest them within the shortest possible time. You cannot make the people uncomfortable and you think it can be at peace.
Today FM reports that the scheduled meeting between the sole administrator and community members in Obele recorded very low turnout as residents stayed away, including the chiefs in the community, for fear of being targeted by the suspects still at large. Meanwhile, a family member of the late vice chairman of the Obele Council of Chiefs, Ferdinand Dabiri, says the motive behind his murder remains unclear. Speaking to newsmen, the family member, who chose to remain anonymous, revealed that residents fled in panic after gunshots were heard during a family meeting aimed at restoring peace in the area. He noted that Chief Dabiri was among those leading efforts to end the long-standing crisis in Obele, which he said has been driven by cult-related activities since 2009. The family member clarified that the unrest is not linked to political or traditional leadership disputes.
We're having a family meeting in our town hall. Part of our agenda is how to make peace in our community and also in our family. Before the young man came inside and didn't speak anything, he just walked down to the late Chief Dabresin and shot him. We have already made peace. Chief Dabresin is also one of the people making peace. The existing issues is also the crisis have been rocking in the community. It's just a courtesan. We have been tackling over more than 2009 now. So it's not a chieftaincy or political crisis. And we're also appealing that the government should also, and the local government chairman, the administrator, appealing that we also assist us. Even the chiefs who are supposed to be are not here.
Another member of the community attributed the prolonged unrest in Obele to a lack of effective leadership, calling on the government to establish a military base in the area to enhance security.
The leadership in this community is not what it ought to be. I will suggest a situation whereby the government, both from the states and the local government, will come to our aid. If it requires getting us a military base here, it will go a long way.
You're listening to the World News on Today95.1 FM, Voice of the People. After the break, more news, foreign and sports stories. Stay with us.
Every day, every hour, when the big stories break, depend on our 24-hour news team to bring you the latest. Today, 95.1 FM.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned. Linking Julius to cultism, insisting that his brother was not involved in any cult-related activities, contrary to certain media reports. He also urged online bloggers to verify information thoroughly before publication to avoid spreading false narratives. While expressing gratitude to the River State Police Command for its prompt response, the grieving family called for a thorough investigation and prosecution of those responsible for Okpor's death.
So immediately we arranged and moved my brother's corpse to military hospital, the mortuary, Taba Road. There we deposited his remains there, after which we returned and I went back to his compound where his neighbors also spoke so good about him that he was their caretaker and was known for his good attitude. So when I asked further, they told me that he was escorting a girl called Precious. Precious usually visits her friend who lives there. One Rejoice is her host. But that very day, according to Rejoice, that Precious visited her and she was not around. And Precious spent time with Julius and eventually wanted to leave. So she left there, she booked a boat. Immediately the boat arrived, Julius had to escort her outside. There he met his end.
The River State Police Command had earlier issued a statement describing the killing as cult-related. Meanwhile, the youth president of Rumo Lumini in Obiakpa local government area of River State, Felix Chinda, has dismissed reports of a cult war in the community. This follows a statement by the River State Police Command that preliminary investigations into the death of Julius Okpor, a 300-level student of Ignatius Adjuro University of Education, indicate a connection to ongoing rival cult activities in the area. Speaking in an interview with Today FM's Uchendu Edroho, Chinda clarified that the killing of Okpor was strictly related to student cult activities within the university campus and not a reflection of any cult-related violence in the Rumo Lumini community. While acknowledging that the university is located within the community, Chinda maintained that there are no cult activities in Rumo Lumini, emphasizing that the community leadership, in collaboration with local vigilante groups, are working closely with security agencies to maintain the existing peace and security in the area.
Everybody is going about their lawful businesses on a daily basis, even after the killing. There is no any court war in Romolumeni anywhere, no court-related activities, whatever. What happened during our finding, and as we make more findings, purely court-related activities inside the adjoining university is a student thing. It does not in any way concern or affect Romolumeni, even though it happened within the community.
Chinda also disclosed that the community leadership held a security meeting with the Nigerian Navy and the police prior to the killing of the student as part of proactive efforts to sustain peace, reaffirming that Romolumeni remained peaceful before and after the incident, with residents going about their lawful activities.
Take care of the issue. The police, even as we speak, they are also inside the school in seeing how this culprit can be brought to justice. I think there is no any court activities or related issue to that in Roma. The OSPAC, which is one of the strong active policing in Romolumeni, they have been very active in terms of these situations, but I must say here the OSPAC is not being funded by any group. Even the community is finding it difficult in terms of logistics and even operational vehicle.
The paramount ruler of Omokiri community in Alu Clan, a Kwara local government area of Rivers State, His Highness Eze Hassan Welewa, has, on behalf of the chiefs, elders and the entire Omokiri community, congratulated the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Port Harcourt, Professor Onari Georgeril, along with the management and staff of the institution on the celebration of its 50th anniversary and 35th convocation. In a statement signed by the monarch, he expressed the community's satisfaction with the developmental strides and achievements recorded by the university, noting that as a host community, Omokiri is proud to be associated with the institution. The Omokiri monarch pledged the continued support of the community toward the growth and progress of the university, praying that God Almighty would continue to inspire the Vice-Chancellor and his team for even greater accomplishments. Eze Welewa further assured the Vice-Chancellor and the management of the university that the Omokiri community would never be part of any group that seeks to disrupt the institution's activities or existence. He also called for stronger cooperation and a more harmonious working relationship between the university and the host community. On the foreign scene, a Brazilian Supreme Court justice has threatened to detain former President Jair Bolsonaro. The judge, Alexandra Moraes, accused Bolsonaro of breaching a ban which bars him from appearing in audios, videos, and interviews shared on social media. Justice Murray said the ex-president could face immediate imprisonment unless his lawyers could provide a satisfactory explanation within 24 hours as to why their client had appeared in a video shared by Bolsonaro's son, Eduardo. Bolsonaro is on trial for allegedly plotting a coup to prevent President Luiz da Silva from taking office in 2023, which he denies. Moraes had already imposed a raft of restrictions on Bolsonaro on Friday, including a night time and a weekend curfew, as well as 24-hour surveillance to prevent him from fleeing the country while he is on trial. To end the news, here's a summary of the major stories. The Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's $21 billion foreign loan. The Police Service Commission has vowed to flush out drug addicts in the Nigeria Police Force. You heard that the wife of former Minister of Transportation, Judith Tamechi, has denied receiving 4 billion naira monthly from the NDDC. And on the foreign scene, we told you that Brazil's Supreme Court has threatened to arrest former President Jair Bolsonaro. Ifunanya Obama Ndukwe edited the news. For comments and inquiries, please call 0818-389-2850. Send your emails to news@todayfmlive.com. Read our stories on www.todayfmlive.com. I am Amaka Felix. Thank you for listening. Good evening.
Today's news, today's entertainment, today's sports, today's issues. Today on Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt.
Today 95.1 FM, where news meets insight, sports meets passion, and entertainment meets excellence. Expert analysis from seasoned professionals and our top analysts, informing, educating, and entertaining you. Your voice, your station. We are the voice of the people.
The station with the...
As the voice of the people, we make sure that no one misses out. On Today 95.1 FM, there's something for everyone.
Our tech show, because tech is new money. Our kids show, because we love the little ones.
Our Gospiration, because it's the moment of truth. Our High Life show, because high life is vintage.
Our sports show with the adrenaline. Our midnight show, because we care about your love life.
Our Nostalgia Drive, because old is gold. Our show for young people, because Gen Z code is on.
Our Pigeon Bit, because na Naija we day. Our book review, because books are a mirror. Our big stories, because big things only.
Our health shows with seasoned health experts, because we care that you're healthy. Our eyewitness report, because we want to hear from you. Our reggae show, because Rastafari.
One love.
Red is passion. Pink is for unconditional love. Blue is for loyalty. While black is secretive and mysterious.
Baby, tonight,
let's talk about love. The passion, the bliss, the betrayal, and everything in between. On Lovey Dovey, Mondays to Thursdays from 11 p.m. beneath the night sky with the Amaka Felix on Today 95.1 FM.
Education never ends, and we believe it starts even way earlier than most of us think. On Andre Gorgie, every Tuesday, 1 to 2 p.m., we unravel these various building blocks and its challenges that make you and I better versions of ourselves. Andre Gorgie on Today 95.1 FM.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's take you into a realm, another dimension, a reality of higher intelligence, discovery, and quantum possibility. Tune in every Monday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. on this station and be part of this journey as we address issues that relate to you and your tech life. It is Today's Tech Show on your premium talk, news, and sports station. Today, 95.1 FM.
A person who knows how to read and does not read is no different from a person who does not know how to read at all.
Books are the mirrors of the soul, a powerful tool for change, a means to an end. That end is a peaceful society which grooms enlightened and empowered individuals. So, make literature your utopia.
This same issue that we see in this book is still prevalent in our society today. Like up to today, some parents, some people
will still say you can't marry from this tribe. You shouldn't marry from this tribe.
God forbid, I can't marry.
Yeah. Join us in book review every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Let's help you find your utopia.
Today is business. Today is a new trend for your businesses. We give you all the information you need to grow your business, new ideas and innovations that keep you earning more and staying relevant.
Every day, we engage in business, buying and selling, trading, and exchanging of services as individuals or as a country. Money goes round, it goes up and down. But have you ever wondered what business is all about? And have you ever wondered how you can stand out in your business?
Today FM has got you covered every Wednesday between the hours of 1 p.m. to 2 p.m.
Learn all you need from professionals on how the country runs its business affairs and how you can be an outstanding entrepreneur and grow your business.
Business Today.
It all begins with breaking news.
Now, make no mistake, this is a difficult mission, and it will remain difficult for some time.
Then it keeps trending. Events, issues, personalities, all struggling to gain attention. But in the race for deadlines, the intrigues, power play, undercurrents are often missed or underreported.
Insecurity here is basically a product of poverty.
But not anymore. As the platform on radio steps in to fill the missing links on events, issues, and personalities in the news.
I'm not afraid of anybody.
The platform on radio serves only the hottest topics and trending issues. Only on Today 95.1 FM. 95.1 FM. Port Harcourt.
Weekdays, 4 p.m.
Get on the platform on radio and be served.
Have you ever been in a situation where you had to pay a fine for an indictment? Then you later found out that there was an already established law to protect you from that penalty. Have you ever been denied a position because of your gender or disability? Have you ever been discriminated, treated unfairly, assaulted or cheated by your landlord, employer, tax collectors, bank, family, business partners, and the police? What if the breach between you and justice is just the right knowledge? I'm sure you've heard that knowledge is power. Join us every Saturday, 10 to 10:30 a.m. on Today 95.1 FM for the program The Law Today, to get acquainted with your legal rights and beneficial interests as a citizen of Nigeria. The Law Today, 10 to 10:30 a.m. every Saturday, is brought to you by Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt.
Wake up to today's quest, where breakfast on the radio is full course. We start with some motivation to ignite the spark in you for a great day. Then a full interactive sports show on Sport Attack 6:30 a.m. Unbeatable and concise news report on the world news at 7 a.m. And our newspaper review segment now 7:30 a.m. Oh yes, 7:30 a.m. The scoops and the commentaries from my esteemed panelists. Today's quest, 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt. Miss it, you miss out.
Live your truth. Express your love. Share your enthusiasm. Take actions towards your dreams. Talk your talk. And walk your walk.
It was years ago. There's a statute of limitation on this stuff.
Make today worth remembering as we discuss issues as it affects Nigeria moving forward. Talk that talk.
Weekdays, 2 p.m.
Exclusively on Today 95.1 FM Port Harcourt.
Voice of the people.
Maybe home is somebody's smile when they look at you for the first time. Maybe home is being a home to something you love and adore with all your heart, and that is what life, friendship, and love are all about. Maybe home is listening to all of your favorite shows on Today 95.1 FM. We create memories. We inspire comfort. We are the voice of the people, and we are home away from home.
modern city of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. This is Today 95.1 FM.
This is Today 95.1 FM Pawtucket, Voice of the People. It is time again for a rundown of the foreign news stories that made the headlines on the world today. I am Amaka Felix. Good evening. The headlines: Ukraine and Russia hold fresh peace talks tomorrow. Bangladesh Air Force plane crashes into college campus. Iran accuses Europeans of disrespecting 2015 nuclear deal. French cities impose curfews on children after drug violence. Details in a bit. Zambia has signed a landmark agreement to build a $1.1 billion crude oil refinery and energy complex in Ndola, marking a significant step toward energy self-sufficiency. In a statement, Zambia government said the project will process around 60,000 barrels of crude oil per day, enough to meet the country's entire current fuel demand and potentially supply neighboring nations in the future. The refinery, to be located in Zambia's Copperbelt province, is expected to drastically reduce the country's dependence on costly fuel imports and save millions of dollars annually. Officials say the project aligns with Zambia's long-term economic goals by boosting energy security, creating jobs, and strengthening regional trade links. Away from Africa to the rest of the world, the World Health Organization (WHO) says Israel's ground offensive in central Gaza has compromised its efforts to continue working after its facilities came under attack. The UN agency accused Israeli forces of attacking a building housing its staff and their families in the city of Deir el-Balah yesterday and mistreating those sheltering there. Its main warehouse was also attacked and destroyed. The Israeli military has not yet commented. Its first major ground operation in Deir el-Balah since the start of the war with Hamas 21 months ago has displaced tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians amid warnings of a severe hunger crisis across the territory. At least 19 people have been killed as a Bangladesh Air Force training aircraft crashed into a college and school campus in capital Dhaka. A fire services official said the F-7BGI aircraft crashed into the campus of Milestone School and College in Dhaka's Uttara neighborhood when students were taking tests or attending regular classes. A doctor at the National Institute of Burn and Plastic Surgery said more than 50 people, including children and adults, were hospitalized with burns after the crash. Muhammad Yunus, head of Bangladesh's interim government, said necessary measures would be taken to investigate the cause of the accident and ensure all kinds of assistance. Yunus also announced that an emergency hotline has been activated at the National Institute of Burn and Plastic Surgery in the wake of the crash. The incident comes a little over a month after an Air India plane crashed on top of a medical college hostel in neighboring India's Ahmedabad city, killing 241 of the 242 people on board and 19 on the ground, marking the world's worst aviation disaster in a decade. Tehran has accused Britain, France and Germany of failing to respect the 2015 Iran nuclear deal after they threatened to reimpose sanctions over its atomic program. The 2015 deal reached between Iran and the UN Security Council's permanent members, Britain, China, France, Russia, and the United States, plus Germany, imposed curbs on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. But it unraveled when the United States in 2018, during Donald Trump's first term as president, unilaterally withdrew from the accord and reimposed sweeping sanctions. The Europeans had pledged continued support for the deal, but the mechanism intended to offset US sanctions never materialized effectively, and many Western firms were forced to exit Iran, which has since faced a deepening economic crisis. The International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is the only non-nuclear armed country currently enriching uranium to 60%, far beyond the 3.67% cap set by the 2015 accord. In recent weeks, France, Britain, and Germany threatened to trigger the UN snapback mechanism to reimpose sanctions on Tehran, accusing Iran of breaching its nuclear commitments. The head of the United Nations has called on the surging artificial intelligence sector to prioritize sustainable energy for running power-hungry data centers. Secretary General Antonio Guterres said a typical AI data center site where data is processed uses the same amount of electricity as 100,000 regular homes. Guterres said with AI development booming, those demands are rapidly expanding, noting that largest data centers will soon use 20 times the current demand, and by 2030, data centers could consume as much electricity as all of Japan does today. The UN boss noted that the artificial intelligence industry itself could be harnessed to help with some of the very improvements that are needed. Gang leaders, corrupt officials and police officers, fake passport dealers and companies supplying small boats could be among those publicly named in UK sanctions targeting people smuggling. The measures, which are due to be unveiled tomorrow, are central to Prime Minister Keir Starmer's plan to clamp down on small boat crossings by going after the global criminal networks behind them. Dozens of individuals and entities are expected to be hit with asset freezes, travel bans and restrictions from engaging with the UK's financial system under these sanctions. It comes as the government comes under growing pressure to stem the flow of small boat crossings. Starmer has pledged to smash people smuggling gangs and made tackling illegal migration at source a key election pledge last year. A federal court has begun hearings in a pivotal case as Harvard seeks to force the United States government to return $2.6 billion in federal funding frozen earlier this year. A lawyer for Harvard, Stephen Lehotsky, as the hearing said the case was about the government trying to control the inner workings of Harvard. Lehotsky said the funding cuts, if not reversed, could lead to the loss of research, damaged careers, and the closing of labs. President Donald Trump's administration has battered the nation's oldest and wealthiest university with sanctions for months as it presses a series of demands on the Ivy League school, which it decries as a hotbed of liberalism and anti-Semitism. Harvard has resisted, and the lawsuit over the courts to its research grants represents the primary challenge to the administration in a standoff that is being widely watched across higher education and beyond. The case is before U.S. District Judge Alison Burroughs, who is presiding over lawsuits brought by Harvard against the administration's efforts to keep it from hosting international students. The United States has announced that it has left the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, saying that the UN Cultural and Education Agency, best known for establishing World Heritage Sites, is biased against Israel and promotes divisive causes. The State Department spokeswoman said the continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States. The U.S. exit was expected under President Donald Trump, who also ordered withdrawal from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization in 2017 during his first term. President Joe Biden then re-established U.S. membership. State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce described UNESCO as working to advance divisive social and cultural causes and being overly focused on UN sustainability goals, which she described as a globalist ideological agenda. Bruce also highlighted what she said was the body's anti-Israeli position in admitting Palestine as a state. The U.S. Justice Department has asked Ghislaine Maxwell, an associate of disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, for a meeting with its prosecutors. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said they planned to ask, "What do you know?" adding he intended to meet her soon. Maxwell's legal team told the BBC they were in discussions with the government and she would always testify truthfully. President Donald Trump has faced loud calls, including from his own supporters, for more disclosures in the Epstein case. Last week, he directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to ask a court to release all relevant grand jury testimony in the case. Epstein, a convicted sex offender, died by suicide in a New York prison cell in 2019 while he was awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. A number of French cities have imposed nighttime curfews on young people following a spate of violence linked to drug trafficking. Nantes in the south was the latest to bring in measures which authorities said were meant to prevent under 16s from being exposed to violence and to contain tensions. Over the course of the last month, several shootings, one in broad daylight, left one person dead and several injured. Last week, the body of a 19-year-old man was found partially burned on the outskirts of Nantes. Russia and Ukraine will hold a new round of peace talks in Istanbul tomorrow. This was disclosed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky proposed fresh talks over the weekend, days after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Russia with severe sanctions if there was no ceasefire between Moscow and Kyiv within 50 days. Washington has also pledged new weapons for the Ukrainian military after Russia intensified attacks. Dozens of provincial officials and hospital staff attempted to cover up a lead poisoning case that made hundreds of children sick in northwest China and sparked widespread outrage. Gansu provincial authorities said in a report that the officials tampered with the blood test of students who were poisoned at Peixin Kindergarten in Tianjin City. The report said city officials also accepted bribes from an investor in Peixin while neglecting food safety inspections across several preschools. In an attempt to attract more students, Peixin chefs had used inedible paint to enhance the look of its meals. Food samples were later found to contain lead 2,000 times in excess of the national safety limit. That story from China concludes tonight's edition of The World Today, as produced by Odinakaji Celestin of the News Department. But before we go, here is a summary of the stories that made the headlines. We told you that Ukraine and Russia will hold fresh peace talks tomorrow. You heard that Bangladesh Air Force plane has crashed into college campus. We also told you that Iran has accused Europeans of disrespecting 2015 nuclear deal. And finally, French cities has imposed curfews on children after drug violence. Till same time tomorrow. Have a lovely evening and thank you for listening.
Unleash the power of the airwaves with the ultimate radio experience.
Tune in to Today 95.1 FM, the voice of the people. Don't just listen, immerse yourself.
That is 100% true.
BBC World Service. I'm Richard Kagoy in Nairobi with Focus on Africa. How are young people in South Africa dealing with persistent electricity outages?
Young people aren't waiting, so they are buying. Firstly, you can buy a few solar panels and a rechargeable battery, and you can charge the battery, and then you can charge people to use your battery.
Who are the allied democratic forces, and why have Uganda and the DRC struggled to defeat them?
Fighting the ADF is not really a priority for the DRC government currently because of the fact that it doesn't pose a material political threat.
And why do African governments treat air travel as a luxury and tax it heavily?
They don't really appreciate the benefits, the wider benefits that air transport brings to bear on their economies.
That's all on the BBC, Tonight in Focus. First, the news.
I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. Hello. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says at least 33 people, including 12 children, have died of starvation in the territory over the past 2 days. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinians said he'd had reports of staff, doctors and journalists fainting from hunger and exhaustion. Hundreds of people have been killed seeking aid. Jan Egeland is the head of the Norwegian Refugee Council, which has been working in Gaza.
We have hundreds of truckloads waiting to come into the starving Gazan families. We've been denied that. I think it is deliberate starvation. There is no other way to describe it. Everybody condemned the horror and the terror of the 7th of October. The people dying massively in the tens of thousands are completely innocent women and children.
The estate of Mike Lynch, the tech tycoon whose yacht sank last year, is facing potential bankruptcy following a court case in London. A judge has ruled that Mr. Lynch's company was deliberately overvalued when he sold it to Hewlett-Packard, as our Europe Regional Editor Paul Moss explains.
It's nearly a year since Mike Lynch drowned in an accident which also killed his teenage daughter and 5 others. He'd set sail to celebrate being acquitted in a fraud case involving Hewlett-Packard, but the company continued to pursue him with a civil action. They argued Mr. Lynch had misrepresented his business when he sold it to them for nearly $12 billion. A judge has now agreed, and although he rejected the full amount Hewlett-Packard claimed, the Lynch estate could still be forced to pay them hundreds of millions of dollars.
The United States has announced that it's pulling out of UNESCO, the United Nations Culture and Education Agency. It's best known for listing World Heritage Sites. The State Department in Washington accused the organization of bias against Israel and promoting divisive social and cultural causes. It added that continued involvement was not in the U.S. national interest. The head of UNESCO said the U.S. withdrawal was regrettable but expected. At least 12 bodies have been recovered after a mine collapsed in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Residents say many others are feared to be missing. Barbara Pled-Usher reports.
Reports said a series of cascading landslides buried up to 15 mining shafts without warning. It's not clear why. This happened at an artisanal mining site north of the city of Bukavu in the eastern province of South Kivu. A local resident said it was likely impossible to know how many people were working there when the shafts collapsed because of the informal nature of the site. The incident took place in an area controlled by M23 rebels who recently seized mineral-rich territory from Congolese forces.
You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. The European Court of Human Rights has ruled that 239 people were wrongly convicted in Turkey. All had been charged with belonging to the Gülen Hizmet movement, which had been made illegal, but were found guilty purely because they used a mobile phone app known as Bylock. Turkish prosecutors had said the app was used exclusively by Gülen supporters, but the Human Rights Court said this meant they'd been denied a fair trial. North Korea says it's building a third large warship following the launch of 2 others this year. The 5,000-ton destroyer is expected to be completed towards the end of next year. The first destroyer was unveiled in April. The launch of the second was botched, leaving the vessel partially submerged. Tens of thousands of people have fled their homes in the Philippine capital, Manila, because of flooding caused by heavy rain. Schools and offices have also been closed in the city and surrounding areas. Videos show residents wading through inundated streets. Coca-Cola has confirmed it will launch a version of its eponymous soft drink made with cane sugar in the United States later this year. President Trump said last week that the firm had agreed to make the change. Jonathan Josephs has more details.
For 20 years, Coca-Cola has commemorated new American presidents with limited edition bottles. President Trump is the first to get involved with what's inside. Last week, he said the US staple tasted better when it's made with cane sugar rather than high fructose corn syrup, and doing so would be good for the company. Coca-Cola now says such a version will be added to the range in the US from the autumn. Making it with sugar will be more expensive and comes at a time when the largest sources of American sugar imports, Brazil and Mexico, are facing tariffs.
Jonathan Josephs reporting, and that's the latest world news from the BBC.
Hello, I'm Richard Kago, and here's what's coming up on this edition of Focus on Africa. How are young people in South Africa coping with persistent power cuts?
Young people aren't waiting for other people to solve their problems for them. They're actually starting these businesses. So they are buying. Firstly, you can buy a few solar panels and a rechargeable battery, and you can charge the battery, and then you can charge people to use your battery. There's one example that has set up 800 of these solar and battery systems spread out in South Africa.
We look at why Uganda and the DRC have failed to contain one of the region's deadliest rebel groups, the Allied Democratic Forces ADF. And why is air travel in Africa so expensive? We look at how heavy taxation and government policies are keeping the skies out of reach for many.
The network they operate is very limited and also uncoordinated with other operators in the region, because many of the airlines in the West and Central Africa region do not actually cooperate.
It's Tuesday, July 22nd. We begin in South Africa, where rolling power cuts, also known as load shedding, have been part of daily life for years. Wealthy households have long gone off-grid, installing boreholes and solar power systems to keep the lights on. But now there's a shift. New companies are offering pay-as-you-go solar systems, giving lower-income families and businesses run by young people in townships a chance to access reliable power too. As the national utility continues to struggle, more and more South Africans are turning to affordable solar energy. One of them is Mark Moodley, who lives in East Johannesburg. He made the switch to solar to keep his 81-year-old mother, Sakerini, alive. She depends on an oxygen machine to breathe. Mark shared his story with our correspondent, Punza Fikhlani.
What was happening is that we're having power cuts, and my mom is on an oxygen concentrator, and we couldn't do anything else because it was going off for sometimes 6 hours. I was getting a portable converter and running it off the car battery, and it doesn't last too long. And then she'd end up coughing. You end up sitting up with her, lifting her arms on the bed so oxygen gets into her lungs.
Last year, Sajarini spent 3 weeks in intensive care. Back then, doctors said she might not survive the year, but the steady power supply has given them more time together. Mark again.
Being a lifesaver, and even now with the solar, her oxygen doesn't get depleted, and I don't have to rush her into emergency when there's no electricity.
That was Punza Fikhlani speaking to Mark Moodley. Mark's story is just one example of how young South Africans are being forced to adapt as unreliable electricity supply disrupt their daily lives, whether it's work, school, or family responsibilities. To understand the broader impact, I spoke to Hilton Trollip, an honorary research associate with Energy Systems Research Group at the University of Cape Town. I started by asking him how these electricity issues are affecting young people in particular.
So it affects them in a very different way. The rich and middle income people have sorted themselves out with various private solutions, etc. For the lower income people and people in townships, it's a big problem because they neither have the resources or the backup to provide very basic electricity services that they need, and they don't have easy access to travel outside the townships to do very important things, particularly work that requires electric light, computer work, etc.
If access to consistent electricity then becomes a reality, how then do you think this could transform the lives of young people in various communities around South Africa?
So what we're seeing happening, Richard, is that some local small businesses and innovative people are using a new technology, which is solar plus batteries, to provide certain essential electricity services that the grid used to provide or does provide in other countries. And these essential electricity services are firstly lighting, which is critical. You know, if when the sun goes down and it's wintertime and it's 6 o'clock and you've got no light, this really has a huge negative impact on your life. And these new technologies, solar plus batteries, what happens is instead of relying on the grid, the battery is charged during the day by the solar, and you also have electricity during the day from the solar, and then you can use it at night. And it's important to say that it can't be used for cooking or for heating water, but what it can be used for is lighting, running your PC, running your TV, running your cell phone, running critical medical equipment. So even though you can't cook and heat water, you can still do a whole lot of things like your homework for school. You know, retail businesses such as the small spaza shops and shops in townships, people work during the day and then they're only there at night. And if it's dark, both the business can't survive, but also people can't shop, etc.
Now, that's really interesting to hear that, because I know South Africans are very resilient people. And I just wonder, especially for young people, what sort of coping strategies have they been able to devise around this in light of the challenges that they've been facing with electricity supply?
Before these new businesses started making solar and batteries available as a business, what young people would do is they would make sure that they charge their cell phones at friends, they would charge big batteries at friends, or somewhere where there was electricity, so they would make sure that they had charged batteries in their laptops, their phones, and also for lighting in battery-operated torches, etc. But now with these new businesses coming up with solar and batteries, we have businesses that are located in the poorer areas and the townships, and they are selling these services at an affordable price. So now the small entrepreneurs are stepping in and providing electricity services such as light and for communications, cell phones, medical equipment, retailers, fridges as well, that the grid used to supply.
Any particular story that really stands out for you of how, young people have navigated this? Anyone that really inspires you, something that's worth sharing?
Young people aren't waiting for other people to solve their problems for them. They're actually starting these businesses. So they are buying, firstly you can buy a few solar panels and a rechargeable battery, and you can charge the battery, and then you can charge people to use your battery. And some of these businesses have got quite big. There's one example that has set up 800 of these solar and battery systems spread out in South Africa.
And just speaking about solutions, what are some of the most realistic ways that South Africa as a country could begin to fix its electricity supply issues?
People often make the mistake that if you've got electricity, you've got electricity, and if you haven't, you haven't. There's high-power devices and there's low-power devices. It's a different problem to supply it. So these solar and battery services that I've been talking about, they're good for low-power devices. South Africa has got energy-intensive big industries, and for those to be solved, that has to be solved at the level of very much bigger systems. But this is happening too. If you come to South Africa and you look at, for example, shopping malls, most of them are covered with PV panels. and they've got large battery systems inside there, inside the shopping malls, so that the malls can continue operating with the grid, the national grid, with the big power stations, are working or not. But those are all the people that have got the capital and the access to resources to provide that. And what the difference is with what I was talking about, the young people in the townships, etc., is that their lower power needs are now being provided by these very entrepreneurial, innovative business solutions where they're being charged small amounts of money to provide their very basic services.
That was Hilton Trollip from the University of Cape Town. More than 100 armed groups are believed to operate in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Among them is the Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF, a group that has waged a brutal campaign of violence in both the DRC and neighboring Uganda for decades. 3 years ago, suspected ADF fighters killed nearly 40 students during a raid on a school in western Uganda before fleeing across the border into Congo.
Targeted in their dormitories, the militants set fire to the boys' residence. The girls were hacked or shot to death as they fled, some abducted.
If they are telling us the borders are secured, security is tight. I want the security to tell us where they were.
That was the BBC's Barbara Plett Usher reporting. In 2021, Ugandan authorities also blamed the group for deadly suicide bombings in the capital, Kampala.
The hallmarks of the attack clearly indicate that the ADF-linked radicalized groups who still have a desire to carry out lethal attacks on soft targets using suicide attackers and improvised explosive devices behind these attacks.
That's the voice of the former Ugandan police spokesperson, Fred Enanga. Originally formed in Uganda, the ADF has been active in eastern DRC for nearly 2 decades. The Congolese government accuses the group of terrorizing communities in North Kivu province, carrying out killings, beheadings, and abductions. To understand more about the group and why both Uganda and DRC have struggled to defeat it, I spoke to Rose Mubanya, an analyst with control risks in East Africa. I began by asking her how the ADF was first formed.
So the group was formed in the 1990s by a section of Ugandan Muslim leaders who had been complaining of repression by the government. Basically, it was on religious grounds, saying that they're facing religious persecution and that they want to form their own caliphate. However, if you look at where they set up in Eastern DRC from the beginning and their operation throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, it was clear that there were some criminal intents from the beginning, and that's why they chose to settle in Eastern DRC, because they knew that there was limited state governance there, and so they could operate freely. It's religious, of course, but I think the criminal element is a bit stronger when you look at the history and mode of operations of the group from the beginning.
Right, because you say the group was formed in the 1990s, so they've been around for quite a while. So what explains really their resilience and ability to endure as an insurgency?
I mean, they've been resilient mostly because of the fact that they operate in Eastern DRC, where state structures are very limited. The DRC government doesn't have much presence in its eastern provinces. So whether it's in terms of security, administration, and all of that, because a lot of those territories are controlled by other militias, which means that for a group like the ADF, they haven't faced much resistance. Until recently, that is, they hadn't faced that much resistance for many years, for decades, as they're operating in Eastern DRC. They're operating almost freely and mostly facing resistance from other smaller militias. But in terms of large-scale government resistance, they didn't face that, and that's why they have been so resistant. Part of the reason why, let's say, the government of DRC had not taken that much action against ADF before 2019 was because, the group is considered foreign, so they don't have any local ethnic affiliations or any local political affiliations, which means that for a long time they were not seen as a legitimate threat to the central government in DRC, and so the government kind of turned a blind eye to the group for a very long time. So that's the main reason why they've been resilient.
Yeah, so they're not like a typical group that operates in the DRC, which has those ethnic affiliations or maybe political links. So are they just a ragtag militia? Are they just loosely organized, or do they have like a command structure? How do they operate?
For a very long time, they operated like a militia, but in the last few years, Since at least 2019, 2018, we've seen them try to organize themselves more to become or have this reputation of Islamist groups. And so this happened from 2019 when they first pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. We saw them trying to emulate the actions of other Islamist groups in the region through attacks. Things like IED attacks in Eastern DRC and Uganda became more and more common. And so even in that, in terms of command structures, they've really tried to strengthen this and have central command structures in the last few years, mostly because they are trying to attract support, funding from larger Islamist groups, in the region or internationally.
So what does this ties to IS mean for civilians and the broader regional security? Could we see the ADF expand beyond its traditional base in Eastern DRC, or have they really attempted, say, maybe like attacks or targets elsewhere just to increase their prominence or their visibility?
The main threat would be to Uganda, because Uganda is one of the main targets of the ADF. They are trying to expand into Uganda, and they're exploiting the porous border between DRC and Uganda, but also the fact that security cooperation between Uganda and DRC sometimes is disrupted by regional tensions. That's the threat, that the ADF is going to continue exploiting this and increasing attacks in Uganda, particularly those areas that border Eastern DRC in the next few years. We've recorded more and more attacks, but it's likely that this trend will continue. However, it's unlikely that the ADF will expand further. For example, conduct regular attacks in Kampala. I think that is very unlikely because the Ugandan security forces, in as much as they have some gaps, their counter-terrorism capabilities have significantly increased in the last few years, which means that it's much easier for them to intercept attacks in high-profile areas like Kampala, for example. This doesn't mean that they won't be attacked. It just means that it's highly unlikely for the ADF to conduct regular attacks successfully in Kampala, but the same can't be said in areas close to the border with DRC. In terms of the ADF expanding to neighboring countries like, for example, Rwanda or even further, Kenya, I think that's also quite unlikely, and for the same reason, because the security forces in these countries have significant capabilities, especially when you compare it to DRC, which is facing multiple security crises and so is not able to fully concentrate on fighting the ADF. So Uganda will be most exposed because of that porous border, but also because of the fact that it's an attractive target for the ADF. And within Eastern DRC itself, the presence of the ADF has disrupted conflict dynamics, worsening the fact that weapons are easily available in DRC with the ADF. That has made it much, much worse. But also it becomes much harder for the DRC government to stabilize these regions because they're not just fighting these hundreds of militias and rebel groups and secessionist groups. On top of that, they're fighting these Islamist groups that is now seeking international recognition.
Rose Momanya from Control Risk in East Africa. If you're a Gen Z and into travel content, a business person on the move, or just someone trying to fly out of an African country, chances are you're paying way more in taxes and fees than someone flying from Europe or the Middle East. According to the Africa Airlines Association, travelers departing from Africa are charged an average of $68 in taxes and extra fees. That's nearly double what passengers pay elsewhere for the same kind of flight. And even if you're just transiting through an African airport, you'll still be hit with extra charges, pushing up the overall cost of flying across or out of the continent. Gabon, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria are among the most expensive countries to fly out of. And when you break it down by region, West and Central Africa top the list, while North Africa is the most affordable. In a bid to address this, the regional bloc ECOWAS recently announced plans to cut passenger service and security fees on regional flights by 25% starting in January 2026. So why is flying in Africa still so expensive? I spoke to Raphael Kuchi, Director of Government, Legal and Industry Affairs at the Africa Airlines Association. I began by asking him why West and Central Africa in particular are the costliest regions to fly from.
In the West and Central Africa region in particular, we have fewer air operators. And these air operators have limited networks. They don't operate much because they don't have bigger fleets. In fact, very few airlines in West and Central Africa have more than 15 aircrafts in their fleets. And therefore, the network they operate is very limited. and also uncoordinated with other operators in the region, because many of the airlines in the West and Central Africa region do not actually cooperate. So they don't actually have code share or block space arrangement where they can exchange passengers to enable passengers travel much more smoothly. So they just do point-to-point operations, and that makes their operations very expensive.
How does this pricing affect everyday people who want to travel across the continent?
For the average person, travel by air still remains a pipe dream. And for those who are very desperate to really travel, in fact, you need to even think beyond just the price of the ticket. Don't forget, in Africa, between some of the countries, you need a visa. And the visa fee can be anything between $25 to $100. Depending on the country you are visiting. So you don't only have to contend with just the high airfare, but also the visa fee, as well as the hotel bill that you are going to bear, which is not cheap in Africa. So all of these combined actually push further the dream of the average person who wants to travel. In fact, even the one who is able to travel, the business person, the trader who is able to travel by air, the high prices actually also constrain the number of times these people are able to travel by air, because if fares were cheaper, they could travel many more times than they probably are able to do.
So, Raphael, could you just break down for me the taxes that would be contained in a typical air ticket? Because I really want to understand exactly what a traveler pays for.
What the traveler is supposed to pay for are passenger service charge. That's a charge, not a tax. Then he's supposed to pay for a handling fee. That is, when you get to the airport, you are supposed to be processed at the airport. Then the states normally will charge a passenger tax. The passenger tax for the fees and charges, they are actually intended for the service providers at the airport. So the airport operator and then the ground handlers, they take charges and fees. Now, when you see a tax on a ticket, it means that money does not go to the aviation sector. It goes direct to government treasury. And the taxes are much, much higher than the charges and fees. The other fee that you pay is for overflight. And in some countries, they've separated it and also to include meteorological services. There's also a charge for cargo handling or baggage handling. So there are many different ones, but the government taxes, they are numerous. In fact, in some of the French-speaking African countries, they still charge what we term the Jacques Chirac tax. To date, it is still in force. We also have in situations where some of the government agencies, they charge a fee for security. Now, the security is supposed to be a state function. It's not an aviation function. State is supposed to provide security, but you find us paying security charge, and then we're paying a safety charge. So there's so many of them. If you look on a typical ticket, you will see minimum 5 or more different taxes. In some cases, you get as many as 15 different taxes and charges and fees on a ticket.
Why do many governments still treat then air travel as a luxury, considering its importance? They impose all these fees, taxes, and charges.
I think it's a lack of appreciation of the value that air transport brings to economies. I will not say lack of knowledge. I think it's lack of appreciation. Because for many, I have visited some countries and spoken with some government ministers on why they should open up their markets and why they should remove taxes and charges. But the responses I get just indicate there's no appreciation of the industry.
Raphael Kuchi, Director of Government, Legal and Industry Affairs at the Africa Airlines Association. Focus on Africa was produced by Yvette Twagira Maria, Stefania Okereke and Sunita Nahar in London. Blessing Aderoba is in Lagos. Paul Bachwinger was the senior producer and Philip Bull the technical producer. Our editors are Andre Lombard and Alice Modengi. I'm Richard Kagoe. Thanks for listening.
Talk radio. I listen to a lot of talk radio.
95.1 FM.
Say no to the ordinary. Embrace the extraordinary. Because we are the voice of the people. Today 95.1 FM.
Today 95.1 FM.